for System Center Operations 2012. Today we're going to really work through the network monitoring. This is a brand new V1 feature in Ops Manager. And I'm Rob Kiefis, Program Manager in the product group for Operations Manager. I work on the core team, and what that really means is I work on things like performance, deployment, maintenance mode, health service, SDK, config service. These are all like core pieces of the product, a part of the platform of Ops Manager. And let me introduce you to Martin here. Martin?
Thank you. I'm Maarten Goed. I'm a System Center MVP from the Netherlands. In my daytime job, I help customers implement System Center Operations Manager. I've done tons of work with the current version and network monitoring pieces. And then I have the privilege of working with Rob and his team through a technology adaptation program on the 2012 version as well.
Okay, so what we're going to talk today about is a few things with network monitoring. We're going to show you guys how we go ahead and discover network monitoring devices, how we monitor them, how we visualize them for you, and how we can report on them for you. And a story kind of to put things in a frame of mind for you. I'd like to tell you a quick story that I've got about this. And this is from my own personal experience actually working in operations at one time. So imagine this. You're an operator. You're in your NOC, your Network Operations Center, and you get a heartbeat alert on one of your servers. And you're sitting there and you're like, oh, look at that. I got a heartbeat alert on my server. Something's wrong. It's red. I better go ahead and find my Windows admin and let him know that something's wrong. So you look up his number, you give him a call, your Windows admin answers the phone, it could be the middle of the night, and he's like, all right, well, let me see if I can connect in with using one of my other tools to kind of diagnose the situation. So your Windows admin, he goes in the system and he looks through it and he's like, yeah, you know, I don't see any hardware failures, everything seems to be working, but I can't ping the box for whatever reason, something's wrong. It must be the network at this point. And so he tells the operator, he calls back the operator picks up the phone, and he's like, yeah, and he goes, yeah, I think it's the network. I've looked it over, it's been about an hour now, I can't find anything that's wrong with the system. So your operator's like, oh, I gotta call the network guys. It's always fun to call the network guys. So he goes ahead and he calls up the networking engineer who's on call, and the network engineer, he answers the phone, and the first reaction from a network engineer a lot of times is, it's Windows. It's not the network. It's never the network. So there may be a little bit of back and forth. Maybe they got to get the Windows guy on the phone as well. They talk it out. Finally, the network guy's like, all right, let me figure out which switch you're plugged into and what port you're in. So he gets out his spreadsheets, his Visio diagrams. He starts looking and figuring out which switch number it is. And then he gets the port number, and he goes in his networking tools, and he hunts through his networking tools, and he finds oh yeah, look at that. That port failed on you. That port's dead. And by now it's about 2.5 hours later, and that server may have been hosting a critical application for your environment, and the application's been down for that 2.5 hours. And you've had a fairly good size outage. So basically what I'm trying to say is it took you 2.5 hours just to get down to resolution for this problem. Now, for Ops Manager 2012, for network monitoring, we're not trying to replace the networking tools that your network engineer was using to diagnose and troubleshoot that problem. But what we are trying to do is give visibility to your operations center on when something is wrong with your network to cut down that amount of time it takes to troubleshoot and get down to resolution. If network monitoring was in place, they would have known that there was a port that was a problem and could have pointed it to him right away. And then he would have said, yeah, let me just check out that port number. He doesn't have to look too much up. He knows the switch, he knows the port, he has all the information. He goes ahead, looks it up, and then fixes it. He'd probably be back and running in less than an hour. So that's really what our intent and our goal here. This is our V1 stab at network monitoring for Operations Manager. Our primary goal is to make sure that we get the fundamentals down. We want to be able to discover as many network devices as we can, do the correct amount of monitoring for them, and be able to report and visualize on them. And Martin's going to go through the first part with you and talk all about how discovery works.
Yeah, but before we do that, let's level set the room a bit on what we have today in System Center Operations Manager 2007 R2. For maybe a show of hands, who's using Operations Manager 2007 R2 today? And show of hands, who's using some network monitoring from R2? Well, a few hands. So, you know, we have some SNMP monitoring. You can add a device with R2. We actually introduced that we can do V1 SNMP as well. but it was basic, right? The one thing you got is it went out, did an SNMP get, looked if it could get the system location, and then it was green. If it couldn't, it would be red. But we wouldn't really know about the health state of an interface, a backplane, or anything else. And even we had other challenges, because with the current product, we rely on the Windows SNMP stack, which in our case didn't really scale well. If you had like hundreds or even more of devices, you'd see some checks failing, or you'd need more management service to handle that, and that was actually quite problematic. And then if you wanted to do extra monitoring, let's say a specific element on that switch or router, and you knew the OID, you'd actually need to go into the authoring pane and add that OID and know all the syntax on how to get there. And even things like rules you could add to do some performance monitoring, of course. We did want to do some SNP monitoring, of course, because you want to do the IT services monitoring as a whole, and you need to know about the network, like Rob said, to come to a resolution quickly. But again, with the current product, you'd have only one class that would show up as a network device. We didn't see any interfaces, and of course you could go into some third-party products, but yeah, today we're introducing some real cool new features in 2012. So what do you get out of the box? Well, out of the box we do discovery. We find your devices, we see what types they are, what elements they have. So we do also have quite a library. We support more than 90 vendors out of the box, where we can discover the network devices, know what to monitor from there. And once we get them into Operations Manager, we can start to visualize and report on them, of course. Then the one thing that we added as well, which is really cool, I think, is we do a server-to-network dependency discovery, or port stitching, if you will. So we go out there, we find the network device. If your Windows servers have agents on them, we're actually able to find both ends and see this server is connected to this network device. And Rob later on is going to show you on how that's actually visualized within the product as well. Now, like we said, we have multi-vendor support. Out of the box, we have quite a number of vendors we support. And even there, if there were to be a vendor that we wouldn't support, we do some network monitoring as well, and you can add from authoring standpoint to that. So there's still an authoring story if you want to add to that. Now, in 2012, we're introducing the ability to do SNMP v3. We did have the SNMP 1 and SNMP 2, but we're now adding SNMP v3, which is something you see today in a lot of the enterprises that is more secure. You use authentication to really reach out to these network devices and start polling them. And the SNMP stack itself is totally rewritten. It's now a dedicated stack within Operations Manager. It scales well, it handles well, and yeah, it's really something that's improved and that you can rely on. And besides using IPv4 monitoring, we also can do IPv6. Now, the discovery always runs on IPv4, but once we get the devices in, we can actually start monitoring them on the IPv6 protocol as well. Now, like we said, we now have a dedicated stack, so the module we use is now quite robust, and other partners can build on that. If, for instance, they want to do specialized network devices or other devices that can talk SNMP, they can actually rely on our stack to build their own management pack and get you more monitoring on our solution. Now, the first step in getting network monitoring going is, of course, the discovery process. And we'll go into a demo in a minute. Now, as you can see, the first screen pretty much looks the same, where we start up the discovery wizard and start to select that we want to add devices. From there, it's totally new. I'm going to show you in the demo what's new, how we do it. But with the discovery process, we identify the devices we want to monitor, and once we get them in, then all the network logic will start to run, and we'll start to monitor them. So let's quickly have a look at that. So here's the new System Center Operations Manager 2012 console. And for those of you who've been to our previous session yesterday, you see that in the administration pane, we have quite a few new nodes. In our case, related to network monitoring, you have a node called Network Management. And under there, we have three sub-nodes. The first one being a discovery rule. Now, the discovery rule is something where we define in the system that we want to discover devices on a certain interval. It could actually be a manual discovery, or it could be an automatic discovery. Now, if we go into the discovery wizard, you see that we can hit network devices, and on the left-hand side, you see that we have new options, which we'll drill into next, things like accounts, the schedule of the discovery, and so forth. Now, if we look at the discovery, we can give it a name. Let's say Atlanta Show Devices Discovery. We can give it a description, of course. Now, we need to select a management or a gateway server. These discovery rules run from a management server or a gateway server, and it's a one discovery rule per management server and gateway server. So we'll hit OM demo. Now, if you've not been to the setup session we did yesterday, in Operations Manager 2012, we're introducing this concept of management pool, of server pools. By default, there's an all management servers resource pool where every management server is member of. And instead of having this RMS doing this workflow, we will distribute all these workflows throughout the management pool. And in our case, we need to select the management pool that will be responsible for monitoring the network devices. And we'll go ahead and select the network monitoring pool. Now, we can do two types of discovery. We can do explicit. Think of it as a list where we do a list, we input a list of the devices we want to discover. Or we can do recursive discovery, where we actually will specify that Operations Manager will go out there and find the devices that are connected to the devices that we specify. And in this case, we'll click recursive discovery, and on the left-hand side, you'll see that we're able to filter, which we'll drill into next. Now, of course, we need to have the correct credentials to reach out to the devices. As you know, we have this concept of run as accounts, where we store these credentials, and run as accounts get securely sent to one of the management servers you want to do the discovery from. We can create a run as account from here. And as you see, it defaults to the community string account type. And we'll say Atlanta show credentials. And then we can enter the community string. Of course, we can select multiple. If we have a range of devices that we want to discover, we could select them all. In this case, we'll just leave the Atlanta show credentials here. And next step would be to specify the devices we want to discover. Again, we could still work with a list here, import, and we can add a list of the devices we initially want to discover and recursively discover more from there. Or we could click add here, could enter an IP address, and just for demo purposes, I'll use the local host because we already discovered our network. We have access modes. We can access it through SNMP, through ping. And in the slide hereafter, I'll explain in more detail how this discovery process works. But we first need to know that the device is there before we'll actually drill into detail and get what interface it has and other characteristics. We'll leave it on both access modes. We can do SNMP v1 or v2 or v3. And in this case, we can do the run as accounts from here as well. Or if we go back to v2, select the Atlanta show credentials I just entered. Port number, hit OK. We can add multiple devices, or we could edit them and remove them, of course. Now, this is the screen where we have the filters. We can do include filters on I want to discover all network devices, or I want to only discover certain specific network devices. If I hit add, I could, for instance, filter on IP address range, saying I want anything that starts with 127. Or we could filter out types, saying no, I only want to discover switches, for instance. I could filter on name, anything that starts with ATL. The object IDs from SNMP, descriptions, anything we could filter on. And the other way around, we could also do exclude filters, certain devices, certain IP ranges that you don't want to discover from this discovery rule. Now, because it's a rule, it actually can be scheduled. So in this case, it defaults to Saturday night at 2 a.m. What we could do every day, we could do different rules for different devices and different segments. And of course, if you have multiple rules, make sure that you time them accordingly. But we could run them manually as well. Just set up the rule now, and we'll go back to the console, right-click, say Run Now, and it'll actually fire off and start to discover. Now, once we have the discovery rule set up, it shows up here in the discovery rules. In this case, you've seen that we've set it up for our lab, explicit. And like we said, we could discover from here as well, run it, make a copy of the rule, and so forth. If it successfully ran, you would actually see the devices showing up under network devices. You'd see the name, the IP address, access modes, and you could even personalize the view and doing things like vendor, model, making sure you can sort on all these elements. If you look in our lab, we have 17 devices we've added using several community strings. And if we go to the right-hand side, now that I've added the vendor and the model, you actually see that we found things like Cisco, Extreme, Foundry, that were found from all the knowledge we have within the discovery. Now, what's the node called Network Devices Pending Management? Well, it could very well be that if we do a recursive discovery, we see this first switch, and from the ARP table, we see the next switch. We know that it's there, but it might be off, it might be in maintenance, it might be some reason why we can't reach it today, and we might be able to reach it tomorrow. If it's off, it will actually show up here on the pending management, and once it's up and running again, we actually will find it and start to monitor it. So any device showing up here would be pending management. So that's the discovery process, and let's have a detailed look on what's happening there. So what do we discover? Well, we discover connectivity, ports, things like the port stitching I said, where we relate the network device to the Windows server, which is Rob is going to show you in a minute. We discover things like VLAN membership. This switch is member of a VLAN. We discover the VLAN membership. HSRP groups, which are like high availability groups within Cisco, is something we discover, and we see the devices that are member of that HSRP group. Like we said, port stitching, of course the key components, so interface, ports, processor, memory. We have quite some logic that's running to monitor these, and Rob's going to show you in a minute. Now the discovery itself, like we said, is actually a three-step process. So the first piece we'll do is we'll run the discovery, go out there, probe all these devices, see if they're there. We'll see the neighboring switches, we'll see other network devices that are connected to that. And once we know that they're there, we actually go into the second step, where we here call processing, where we'll drill into the device. We'll see the number of interfaces, we'll see things, well, the main elements on that switch. We will get that discovered and get that into our system so we can monitor it. And then the third part is the post-processing, where we'll do the port stitching, where we'll do the VLAN membership, the HSRP groups, and so forth. Is there a question? So the question is, can we import MIB files?
No, we cannot.
I think we cannot, no. Yeah. Another question? Well, there is an authoring story, so we do have a library, but if you want to add more elements, and you could write your own monitors and rules to extend on that. Yeah, it's one of the things that in the coming months we'll publish more documentation around how to author on this. So your question is, how would you author something if you don't know what the device is and don't have any information like the MIB? Yeah, that will be a process where you need to specify things like OID from the MIB. So if you had a MIB and you would want to do extra monitoring, you could create extra monitors and rules, but want to extend on that, Rob?
The other thing, just to make note, I think Martin mentioned it earlier, is that as we get requests, as new devices come out and we get requests for devices, we will go through, test the device, certify the device, figure out what's the best monitoring for the device, and then in our cumulative updates, as we release cumulative updates, there will be an updated device list that will, just be a reoccurring thing that we will maintain during the 2012 release.
Okay. So just to recap, it's a 3-step process. We'll first go out probe, find the devices, then drill into a device in the processing stage, and then on the 3rd stage, we'll post-process, make sure we know which VLANs, which HSRP groups and so forth, so we get that discovered. Now, like we talked, we have 2 modes. Explicit discovery, where we give a list of devices, the names, the IP addresses, and we go out there and find them. The recursive mode, where we'll find a few devices and look at things like the ARP table, where we'll find additional devices that neighbor this device. We can discover and monitor from a gateway and a management server only, and we have a single discovery rule per management server and per gateway server. Now, as we saw in the wizard, we can schedule on demand, make a rule that runs manually and just run it, or make a schedule that it runs every night, for instance, to find all the new or updated devices. Now, there's a neat new feature that is called limited discoveries, where it works today for Cisco. If you have a device and you add elements to the device or change things to the device, Cisco can actually send a trap to us, which will trigger a rediscovery, so we can actually find what's changed and apply monitoring logic to that as well. So now that we have things discovered, I think, Rob, you could tell us a bit about what we actually monitor on that?
Yeah, so thank you, Martin. For what we actually monitor, so after we've discovered the things in your environment, the first thing that, of course, we'll set up monitoring on, of course, are going to be the ports and interfaces. And for that, we're going to be looking at things like up, down. We'll be looking at the volume of the bandwidth that's coming in, the utilization, of course, and the broadcast rates. Those are the important things for the ports and interfaces that we really focus on right out of the box with no customization needed on your part. Past that, on the actual devices themselves, we look at processor utilization. And this actually was fairly tricky to do because depending on the vendor, it's always some sort of a different metric that we have to look at. And so what we've done is we've actually looked at all the vendors that we do support, and we've kind of overall holistically said, hey, this is how we're going to give you processor utilization, that it makes sense and it looks the same, even though it may be pulled differently per device. So we try to make that more of a seamless experience for you. And the last thing is, of course, memory. And when I say in-depth, we actually do memory fragmentation, and we also will do the buffer for Cisco-only devices. And past that, we'll just do free memory on the other devices that are available. So then once we've got the basics, and those are sort of the basics, we'll take that extra step. And when Martin said that we'll do that more in-depth discovery, that post-process discovery, we'll find things like this. We'll find the connection health. And this is the connection between a operations manager, managed agent, and one of the ports on one of the devices we've discovered. We'll make that link and monitor the link itself. And if the link goes down, we can then alert on that. So that's one of the first things we'll do. The other one is we'll find the VLANs. We'll crawl through all the things we've discovered, all the switches. We'll find all the VLANs, and we'll figure out how those VLANs relate so we can actually show health. And I'll show in a demo in a few minutes actually how we have a VLAN and which switch participate in the health of that VLAN, and you can actually see that. And then we have HSRP groups, again, which is similar to VLANs, and we do the same thing. We figure out which things play a part in that group, and then from there we'll actually roll the health up and show that as well. So a couple things for additional details, a couple things just to make note of here. First off, we do have the support of the resource pools, meaning that you will have high availability for network monitoring. So if one of your management servers or gateways were to fail and you're using a pool, you're still going to be up and running. Everything will fail over to another one of your management server or gateways, and you'll still be up, able to monitor your network. The other thing is certain ports will be monitored. And what I mean by this is if you have a 24-port switch, we don't actually monitor every port on the switch. We discover them so we know that the ports are there, but we look for only the ports that actually have something connected to it. And those are the ports we'll actually start running the workflows against that do the various port monitoring things like bandwidth, for example, things like that. So any port that is not actually plugged in, and I'll actually show it to you in just a moment, you'll actually see that it'll have the unavailable, the not monitored state, and ports that have something plugged in will actually show the health of those ports. With that said, you can override that. If you wish to say, hey, these ports, I want to monitor every port on the switch, even if something's not plugged into it. We have a critical network port group that we've set up, and all you need to do is just add those ports into that group, and then we'll start monitoring those ports, even though there may be nothing connected to it. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and go to our visualization. So for dashboards, what we decided to do is take a different stab at how we're going to visualize this. We still have state views, we still have performance view and ops manager, but we've added a new visualization feature called dashboards. And the intent here is that you could look at the dashboard and quickly figure out where the problem is, get an idea of what's going on in your environment without having to scroll through 2,000 devices in a state view. So we put 4 new dashboards in there, and I'll walk through each one of these with you. The network summary dashboard is basically our top 10 list, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Then we have the network node, and that would be any kind of network device. And then you can even drill into there and look at the actual interfaces themselves on the interface dashboard. And the last one we've added is the vicinity dashboard. And that one shows your device, its neighbors, and if you have Windows computers that are monitored, connected to it, you'll actually see them within the vicinity as well. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. So reporting, we've added 5 new reports to give you, so you can kind of run and get an idea of what's going on over a period of time in your environment. And I'll walk you through a couple of these reports. The port traffic volume and port error analysis report are pretty cool. So I'll go through those with you in just a moment. Can you switch me over? Okay, so I'm going to move over to our monitoring space, and you're going to see that we have a new node here for network monitoring with a whole bunch of stuff in it. The first landing place you would probably want to go under network monitoring is to take a look at your network summary dashboard. So we're going to open this up, and as I said before, this is kind of our top 10 list that gives you an idea of which devices in your environment and which interfaces in your environment are giving you the most problems right now. Which ones are doing this, have like the slowest response time or showing the highest CPU. You can actually look through the list here, and you can see that in this example here that we have some various devices, and they're showing as to be my largest problem devices at the moment. As we scroll down, you'll actually see the interface is also with the highest utilization. And if we scroll down here, you can see we'll show the ones that are sending the most errors at this moment. I don't have any that are showing errors at the moment, but we will, if they are having send errors, we'll actually display them there. And we have the most receive errors, and I do have an example there for you, and it kind of gives a little bit of information for you around what it is per second that we're dealing with that particular interface. We'll also show you the alerts down below. So we'll have a quick alert view that'll say, hey, these are the nodes that are giving me the most alerts. These are the interfaces that are giving me the most alerts. And so you can kind of give an idea really quickly without going through, I don't know, what do we have here, about 7 or 8 different state views. Without having to click through 7 or 8 different state views, by just looking at one dashboard, you can get an idea of what it's looking like in your environment with the network right now. Now, if you would like to drill in and get more information on one of these, you can just simply click on one of the nodes and go to tasks, and we actually have the network node dashboard. Let me open that one up for you. Now, this is going to give us details about that device. It's going to give us availability. It's going to show us what's connected around it. It's going to give us the description. When we run discovery, we discover various properties of a device. This will give us actually anything that we were able to discover. It will fill in those properties and show you what they are here. So on the left-hand side here, we're showing the vicinity view, and I'll actually show this in a bigger image for you in a few minutes, pivoting off this from a different location. But the availability will show you exactly how we're doing today, yesterday, and relatively recently within the last 30 days. So we move down here. This is everything we've discovered on this device. You can see that from the owner to the IP to the to whether or not it's a certified device. If you have a device out there that we have discovered that isn't one of our certified devices, this will show up as generic. We'll still be able to provide you up-down status of that device and do some basic monitoring of it. And then as we certify the devices, you'll actually get more information and you'll have more robust monitoring on that device. As you can see to the right-hand side, we'll show you average response time of that device, and we can show you processor. And down here, we'll show you what ports are actually being monitored on that device. Now, this is as I specified earlier. We only monitor the ports that actually have something plugged into it. So you can see here, this one here, we have something plugged into it, so we're going to show that it's green. And this one down here, when we have just the green empty white circle here, that means that we've discovered it, we know the device is there, but we're not monitoring it because there's nothing connected to it at the moment. If we scroll a little bit further down, you can see that if we had some alerts on this device that I selected here, we'd actually be able to kind of get an idea. You'd see a history of the alerts that we've been accumulating, and you can go and see if this is a new problem or if it's something that's happened in the past. Now, if you click on one of the interfaces, so say you want to know more about this interface. You're like, maybe this is a red one, and you're like, all right, I got to know what's going on. I got to drill in here. We got to find out what's happening. So if you click on your task pane again, you'll see that we have another one called Network Interface Dashboard. And we can drill into this one as well. Let's give this one a second to load. And this is going to give you, again, what's happening specifically for this interface. Now we're past the device itself, and now we're just into the interface. And we're going to see, hey, bytes sent and received, packets sent and received. We're going to see the errors and discards over here. And, of course, you're going to get, again, what we discovered, the exact details of what we discovered on this device. So these are all very important metrics to help you troubleshoot and diagnose what is wrong. As we scroll down, we'll also have the alert view, so you'll see again that we have alerts. If we had an alert here on this particular interface, you of course would see, hey, oh yeah, this is the problem, and then you could look at the knowledge for it. Question over there? Yes. Currently, there is not a way to customize the screen to show to filter only on the ports that are monitored or the ports that are not monitored. We show both at the moment, but it's excellent feedback. So, thank you. Oh, yes. So who decides who certifies? So for one thing, we'll pull the data from CSS. So if a customer were to call and say that they had a problem or they have a device that's generic and they'd like it to be monitored, we'll add that to the list. So we also will be very proactive at this. Any new devices that come out, we'll look at what's being purchased, what we're currently not handling, and we'll try to figure out and get those tackled as fast as we can to certify them as they come out, as new devices come out or they're missed. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So for generic devices, we do basic up-down, just the very basic things. I think we run maybe like 3 or 4 workflows against a generic device, where if it's one of our certified devices, we could have up to, like on a Cisco device, it's up to about 25 different workflows that we're pulling. And workflows could be anything from various metrics, from performance, memory, buffer, all sorts of different things we'll be pulling from it compared to just up-down. Will be better than it currently is. For the generic devices, that I'm not sure off the top of my head. That I'll have to find out for you if we're going to make additional investments in the generic devices or not before we RTM. Martin, do you want to take that one?
It's not NetFlow. We do an SNMP get on the OID that says packets sent, packets received, so forth. Yeah, it's not NetFlow. So the question was, how do we get this information for interface performance? It's an SNMP get we do to the device and get the proper OID, query the proper OID. Well, today in 2007 R2, we don't really do network monitoring, right? So this will be our first V1 really on making the platform stable. But in general, we don't like do an SMP get for a single OID. We walk the device, we get all the metrics we need to get, but also the ones that are responsible for relaying the performance, the number of bytes sent, received, so forth. Yeah.
Hold on one second. Gentleman at the microphone, yes? Do you have a question?
I don't know if this actually works. There we go. So 2 questions. One, can you take syslog traffic, syslog data into SCOM?
Want me to take that?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we can do syslog today already. And,
Okay.
And that will, you can just send a message to the syslog. You do need to set some kind of rule up in Operations Manager on what you want to do with that. Is that like an alert generating rule? You want to just, but yeah, we can handle syslog today, and going forward, we can handle syslog as well.
And also this network utilization, can we do that live?
What do you mean by, can we do it live?
So like, let's say we go to the interface here and we want to see what's going on right now. Like this is historical as far as I can tell, right?
Yeah, so we pull the data on an interval. So it depends on the workflow and how often we pull, whether it's 30 seconds every 5 minutes, depends on how it was authored. So,
Okay.
So it's not like real time. It is, it's a snapshot in time, but it refreshes as the console refreshes.
And we get to configure that interval.
There are overrides that can be set, yes.
What's the lowest, do you know?
Off the top of my head, it's probably just seconds, I would say. So you can probably take it down as low as you want. But remember, the more workflows you run, the more of a hit you have on the management servers that are doing the network monitoring.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Another question?
When they go through and certify the devices, they do try every supported firmware up the stack. So they do go through a bunch of the different firmwares as they try to certify the devices, yes. So we do, and so as a new firmware comes out, we may have to, in a cumulative update, make a small change to say, hey, we now have this rule change or this metric has had to change as, firmware comes out from Cisco.
I think we have another question.
Who do you email to get this certified? So we're actually going to, we'll have like a more detail about that around as beta and we get closer to RTM, how, you would, if you wanted to actually give feedback on getting a device certified, how that would actually happen and what that process will be. So we are working on that right now to actually iron out the, how this is going to work, how the calls come in, how we're. Can you monitor what? Can you monitor XFlow?
NetFlow?
NetFlow. Oh.
Yeah, so we don't support NetFlow today, and I don't know going forward in release candidate, RTM, and so forth, when and how we'll support that, but we need to get back on that. If you stop by at the end, we'll take that question and take it back with us. Yeah.
The question is all this data going into the warehouse? Yes, it is. I'll show you some reports in a moment. Of the data that, the reports that we've already written, and a lot of the other data you can always mine out yourself. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and close this one here. I want to back this up. So, as I said earlier, we have the last dashboard I want to show you is our vicinity view. So, let's look at this from a different angle. Say you wanted to look to see, maybe from the computer point of view, what is it connected to? If you click on any of the computers in your computer view, we have a vicinity dashboard you can click on. And what it's going to do is it'll actually go ahead, find the computer, find its neighbors, find where it's connected up. And you can see here that this is my computer over here, and I'm actually connected into this switch, and I'm going into that. So that's actually pretty, that's a very useful troubleshooting thing for when you have heartbeat alerts and things like that. Another note is that if you hit show computers, you can also see the other computers in your environment. as well. And obviously the screen is a little smaller now, but you can see that I have multiple computers, and this is kind of how they're connected within my network. I'm right now only showing this with 2 hops, but I can, of course, extend this out to more hops, but of course the screen will get smaller as we add more and more hops. So another thing to make note of here is, now, Martin again mentioned in discovery that when we do the post-discovery, we'll actually find things like the VLANs. So in this example here, I've got a ton of VLANs in my environment. And I've discovered them, and they're healthy at the moment. But let me show you kind of what that looks like in Health Explorer, because we've done some really, we've done a lot of like digging in there to find all the switches that participate in that VLAN and make sure that we're rolling up the health properly. So if I go ahead and open up Health Explorer here for you, and we look underneath availability, you'll see that I have the following devices that roll their health up to my actual VLAN's health. And if you dig into each of the devices, you can actually look and see that, you know, I'm looking at the response of these devices, and that's how I'm kind of figuring out if they're up or down. And if I click on, for example, the ICMP one, you can see the knowledge that we've put in the system. We actually added, I believe it was over 200 pieces of new knowledge. So as problems occur within your network, we give you advice on what to do to fix it. We kind of tell you, this is what we're pulling, this is how often we're pulling. These are some possible resolutions and causes. And you can see here under SNMP as well, I have a little bit different knowledge. So we didn't just try to repeat the same knowledge. We actually really went through here, analyze it, and trying to give you guys good data to help you troubleshoot through the situation. Close out of that. So the last thing to show you is about reports. So if I go ahead and click, for example, on one of my interfaces, I'm going to get the list of interfaces in my system. And I can actually go ahead, just clicking on any one of them, go down to the right-hand side, you'll see I have 3 new interface ports. So we can look at the error packet report, the interface packet analysis, or traffic volume. And give me 1 second to set this up so I'll run one of these reports for you. There we go. So for this one here, as you can see that I've run a port traffic. We've got our volume report going. I can scroll down, and this should be very similar to what you would see in Ops Manager in the past. We still are built on our SRS system, and you could even drill into one of these if you wanted to get more detail. You can see here. Let me scroll down for you. So as you can see, I'm showing you actually the metrics that we're collecting and each interval that we're actually showing throughout the report. And these reports are just like in Ops Manager 2007 R2. You can export them. You can schedule them. It's the same functionality, so you can do the same types of things with them. Just to show you what it looks like in the reporting space under network, these are the 5 new reports we've added. And you can also run like a processor one, for example. We've already filtered the list. So add. Can you hear him? I'm sorry, we can't. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Do you mind stepping up to the mic?
Sorry, I was just wondering if you had a VLAN report, you know, a way to see all the ports that have been detected that are on one particular VLAN, or so. I mean, really, we could, you know, look in and see how our VLANs are configured across ports. Like an easy way to do that.
Currently, there is not a report for showing the VLANs or showing all the reports in the VLAN itself. But it's an excellent feedback. Thank you. Okay. Right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. So what Martin and I try to do is leave a good amount of time to take your questions. But before we do that, I just want to recap on what we've gone through. And then, like I said, it's been our experience for the networking talks that there's been a fair amount of questions. So, we want to make sure that we get a chance to address those for you guys. Again, just to recap what we've talked about earlier, this is Ops Manager. It's our V1 attempt to do network monitoring. What really important for us is to get the fundamentals down, make sure we can discover the devices, monitor what's important for you, and visualize it so you can actually see in a usable way what's happening within your network environment. We believe that, like I said, our goal is not to replace the networking tools your network engineer uses, but to help you get faster to the root cause of the problem. And that's really the takeaway that I want you guys to have today, is that by utilizing Network Monitoring Ops Manager, you have more visibility into your overall application, you have another piece of the puzzle in the stack, and you will have faster time to resolution by using this. Anything to add, Martin? So, before we start taking questions, these are the sessions that we have. We have one more session today, and the other sessions will be up within 48 hours. We have the labs, please check them out. And of course, we have a new program here, the Community Evaluation Program, and this has just started at TechEd. Please, if you get a chance and you are interested in this, register for it by simply sending an email to the email address below. And what you'll get there is the ability to actually get your hands on our beta. You'll actually have support from the product group and from CSS, as we'll give you basically homework assignments every 2 weeks to get your feedback, and it'll give you an opportunity to really get your feet wet with the product before it's shipped so you can become more comfortable in it. And for that, we'd like to open this up to questions. Gentleman right there. No, you're right. Yep.
You were showing on the previous slide something about VHDs. Are you guys providing VHDs with everything installed ready to go so that we could just drop it into our Hyper-V hosts and start them up?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we're looking to do, is to get you guys onboarded faster, is to try to provide some VHDs for you, yes.
Okay. And then what are you typically seeing with the number of management servers versus devices to be monitored, rough ratios when you're talking the networking?
So for right now, what we're looking at is around 500 network devices per management server. We are still, though, not completely feature complete. So we have to run through our final scalability and testing numbers. So the numbers could go higher or lower depending on what the final results. But I can just tell you what it looks like currently.
And you need to take into account as well that if you start to modify these workflows, like the gentleman said, if I want to run them faster, that will give a performance impact as well. So you need to size to the workflows as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just trying to anticipate some of the concerns that the network administrator will come up before he lets me point all my Microsoft stuff to his network infrastructure. And I'm sure the first thing is going to be what kind of load or performance impact it's going to have on that. How would we answer that?
So the question is, do we have any, how invasive are we on his network devices? How much, how much extra overhead are we adding? In our testing, our amount of overhead is very low. We are going to publish some information around that to give him that peace of mind. But we haven't, we've been doing this in some of the very large Microsoft environments, and we've had no impact to their network at all. I mean, from MSIT to environments like what we call GFS, which is some of our very, very large shops that they have thousands of network devices, tens of thousands of network devices. Yes, sir, gentlemen, all the way. So your discovery would probably be your largest hit to the device, but it's minor in the amount of time it takes us to go through it. And again, it is no way has it impacted the actual network itself. It's very low. You may see like a small spike in the CPU on the device of like 1% for the amount of time it takes to quickly pull the information, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. Yes, sir.
Is this solution replacing all the third-party solutions from which are now available?
Is this solution replacing the third-party solutions? Martin, do you want to?
Yeah, so what it's trying to do is all the basics you need to do proper network monitoring, and from this IT service perspective, drill down into the network and understand what's going on and why it's going wrong. That's what we want to provide from the product. Now vendors can still add to this if they have a specialized solution. They could still build on our platform, and but the vendors out there today doing the basics, that's something we'll provide out of the box, and then you can build on top of that for specialized devices. That would be my answer.
Okay. And can you tell us something about licensing? Because normally you have to license every agent. What about if I monitor 1,000 switches?
So license is an excellent question. For that one, you're going to need to stay tuned for to see how we finally come up with the licensing program for it.
And maybe to give you a bit of context today, there's this notion of what the device does. So if it's like a firewall that all the way up to the application level, if you look at the OSI model, up until the application level does its work, we actually need a license. If it's just a switch, just until OSI layer 3 or whatever it is, then you don't need a license. So there is some licensing statements out there already, but like Rob said, for 2012 it might change or it might not, but if you're doing it today, there's good documentation out there as well.
All right, last question. Is it still possible to create your own dashboard views and drag objects in there? Because now you have a class model. So is it possible?
It will be absolutely possible to create your own dashboards. In fact, there's a session, I think the next session, actually, he'll go through a little bit of how you actually create it. We have templates to make it easy, so you can then the template gives you like this, the white space, and then you just drag which things you want in which quadrant. You can move them around, copy, paste them. So. And
even if you look at other solutions out there, like Savision Live Maps, where you can drag and drop on there as well, you could take an interface and an interface instance and just use them on a live map and draw lines there as well. So yeah, we have a full class model you can use.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I'd like to get the gentleman way in the back in the hat.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there any sense of how much overhead in terms of database storage this is going to add to the data warehouse? Or?
Yeah, so on I want to think here for a second here. It was about, I want to say it was about 2,500 devices. We added about 15 gigs to the operational DB. And then the data warehouse, we added about, it was about 100 if we were to jam in about 400 days worth of data.
Per year?
Yeah, so, well, 400 days.
Okay.
So, and then it grooms after that, right? It depends on what your grooming is at, but. Yep, you all the way in the back.
But anything in regard to fiber switching?
Say that again?
Fiber channel switches? Is there anything in regard to that?
No, there's nothing in regard to fiber channel switching.
Well, this is following up on the how to keep the network administrator from flipping out. Is there any need for read-write SNMP strings, or can it all be done with read-only?
Yeah, it can be so you can do it with read-only only. Read-only only. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this out? When's the RTM out?
It's going to be the fourth quarter of this year. Yep. Here comes someone.
Hi, just to follow up questions on the ports themselves. We'd be interested in knowing if you were capable of monitoring or identifying port channels or ports that were participating in trunking.
Currently, Martin, do you want to?
I don't. Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a good question. I'd have to follow up with you and see if there's any of the rules or workflows that actually do that. But off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Thank you.
Yep.
With the port stitching that you were talking about, does that support downward suppression? And by that I mean, if you had servers connected to a switch, the switch has problems with it where it's actually connected, to suppress the actual alerts on the servers?
It's an excellent question. So the scenario is something like this, right? You've got your switch and you have maybe 10 machines behind that switch. The switch fails. The question basically is, will all those machines alert them behind that switch, or will we somehow suppress it because we know the switch has gone down? In this release, we do not correlate that. We don't have a correlation engine in this version. So right now, they would all still alert. But it is on our roadmap for the future as one of the next things to address, whether it's in a service pack or the next actual release of OM, to actually try to correlate to cut down the amount of noise you would get. It's an excellent question, though.
Is there a reason it wouldn't work with Dell Blade switches, internal switches?
Is there any reason it wouldn't work with Dell blade switches? It just depends if one of those is on our discovered certified list. I don't have them all memorized, I'm sorry.
I just wondered if it would help you with the internal external port mapping of blade switches.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Similar question here on SAN switches.
Yes.
Will those be supported?
No, we do not do storage discovery at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it is something that's on our radar for the future. Yep.
I guess the question I want to ask is, what I'm hearing is you don't give us the ability to use to like if we had a device that was not on your certified list, to be able to say, all right, well, just use this MIB file. And I'm guessing, is that because you want to be able to certify the devices so you have a consistent view of things like processor utilization across the board, or is there another reason that you're not giving that ability?
Our biggest worry would be is if we allowed someone to import a MIB file and then just pick the things that they wanted to monitor, they would not understand what impact that would have to the management group itself. You could turn so many things on that you may accidentally overrun your whole system and basically floor your whole all your management servers in the pool. Without having it certified, without having us actually go through and analyze and figure out what are the best metrics, what are the optimal things that make things run smoothly within the environment, without us doing that ahead of time, we'd just be afraid that if we open that up for anybody to do that, it would cause too many outages. It's just like back in Ops Manager 2007, where you could write a really bad discovery rule and take out your whole system. It could be the same scenario again, and we're just trying to be more proactive and not allow those things to happen. So we decided that we're going to go down the path of certifying devices, and then as we get more and more feedback from customers wanting more devices, we'll then just keep certifying more devices. Okay. And so that's kind of the path we've chosen.
Okay, and then I guess as another question would be, a lot of the things that are out there you can point to as like to receive traps. Is this something that, I thought I saw something that implied that you had some trapping ability, but if we wanted to use this as a way to send all our traps to one place, can that be done with this product?
I'll let Martin go ahead.
Yeah, so even today you could do that, right? With 2007, we have the ability to take SNMP traps, and going forward we can still take SNMP traps. But we need to think beforehand, what are we trying to achieve? Because with SNMP probing, we're proactively searching and seeing if the device is healthy, and with SNMP traps, you'd be more reactive to what the device is telling you, and if it dies on you, you won't get the SNMP trap, for instance. So what would be the scenario you're trying to achieve there?
Well, just in general, sometimes you may not want to create all that traffic over your network to do all this probing or sending or getting. It sometimes is a lower cost to be able to receive something. So if I've got an air conditioner in my system room that's got too much humidity, I don't want you sitting there probing it. I just want you to be able to say, all right, I've got a trap. Okay. I've exceeded the humidity, and therefore, want to know about it.
And you could do that. You could set up an alert rule to take SNMP traps in and then alert from there. Yeah, and you could even do it today already.
Yeah. And I would echo what the other two guys said, and that is definitely need alert correlation, and if possible, the ability to monitor SAN storage.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Gentleman over there?
Yeah, I actually forgot what I was going to ask you.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
As far as device certification, do you guys have anything with the Cisco UCS line as far as fabric interconnects, things like that?
I don't remember off the top of my head all the things that we have certified, but I know that for the most part we tried to cover as many Cisco things as we could, so it's pretty robust. We will publish a list, though, probably at beta, of what we currently have certified. Remember?
I do. So earlier we were talking about if one server falls out of the loop, and basically what kind of capacity one management server has for however many network devices. First question is, how does it distribute these devices, or does it, among the pool? And does it redistribute if one server falls from that pool?
So, yeah, the question is around the resource pool. So, yes, if you imagine, for example, if you have 3 management servers, they're all in the same pool, and you're using the pool to monitor your network devices. What we do is, say if you have 1,000 devices, we'll spread it fairly even. So you'll have about 333 on each management server, give or take, okay? And if one of them were to fail, we would redistribute amongst those two. They would each pick up about half of the 300 that one guy, dropped because he fell over. So we will actually shuffle it around. You don't have to do any of that. We will automatically take care of that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Can you monitor to see if your MPIO fails on your server?
MPIO meaning the storage multipathing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do storage SAN MPIO support
But you
today.
can't monitor the connection at all. You can do it that way. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We have one more.
Another quick question.
go ahead.
One of the problems we have is people bringing in those little 4-port dumb switches and adding things to the networks and causing loops. Is there a way with the triggers from Cisco to be able to pick up when a device is plugged in that's not like another switch, automatically pick up, oh no, another switch is in the network?
So there's currently no way that we alert when somebody plugs something new into the system, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
So we currently don't do that, but new devices will show impending for approval. When Discovery runs on your schedule, it'll re-poll once a week or once whatever you set the schedule for. You'll see it impending, and then you'll be like, oh, well, there's something new here. You don't have to monitor if you don't want to, but at least you'll see something new there.
But wouldn't a port go from nothing's plugged in, but it's their state to, oh, I've got something plugged in?
Yeah, I mean, the port would start being monitored when something was plugged into it. We would detect that. But we won't alert that something new is, all of a sudden been lit up.
So there's no way to, when that switches from a empty state to a something's plugged in state, that won't throw an alert saying something was plugged in?
Currently, no, but that may be something you may be able to author yourself. That may not be that may be something you can actually just do, if you need to. Okay. I would bet that's possible.
And we do, with the Opalas integration pack or the Orchestrator integration pack for Operations Manager, we actually have an activity that you can query for health states and then do your runbook. So if it's like Rob said, maybe something you could author. Yeah.
Yes, gentleman in the back.
You think so?
Kind of building on to what he was just asking about that, what are the alerting options that you guys have, such as like page notifications, SMTP, things like that?
Yeah, so we have, currently we have 3 options. Of course, we do email, instant messaging, text messaging, and then we have what we call command. And command can run anything. If you want to run a file for automation, triggered off an alert, you can easily just trigger off that command. And literally anything you can run. Any file, PowerShell script, batch file you can write. So those are currently the 4 options we have for notifications as it is today.
And there's a partner solution that's called Message Master from a German company called Durdek. It can extend on that as well and do two-way traffic and other device support if you want to. So,
gentleman in the front.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if you're supporting consensual polling. I don't really want my objects polled without knowing about it.
Consensually polling. You mean you're asking if we're going to actually say, hey, is it okay to pull these devices and only those devices?
Yeah, well, I remember like Mom used to poll things. I mean, really poll it without, consent. It was vicious. So I was wondering if, in this version, is it more consensual?
No. Gentleman in the back.
I have a quick question. I haven't checked the requirements, but do you have a preference whether the RMS is a VM or if it needs to be a physical device?
So there is no, in OM12, there is no more root management server. So you don't have to worry about it, and you can make them virtual, any of the management servers that you want to use.
Thank you.
Yep.
This might be kind of a dumb question just because of the fact that Windows not supporting it, but SNMP v3, you guys support it, polling that?
Absolutely, yeah. We have SNMP v3 support. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Out of the box.
We're there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for attending.